Welcome CTO Demon friends. Welcome to the CTO Demon channel. Today I'm going to present a new angiographic three-dimensional antegrade puncture technique, short for adapt wiring. It's a type of 3D wiring that you can do easily. CTO wiring. Antegrade wire escalation is becoming the prevailing method of CTO crossing. This is because there's improving operator skill, and there's also improving wire technology. And more operators are beginning to do CTO. And when you begin to CTO, you're not familiar with retrograde and you're not familiar with stingray, and so you do mostly antegrade wiring. Wiring from near the distal cap into the distal true lumen remains a major barrier towards successful CTO PCI. But using 3D fluoroscopic wiring can greatly improve the success of wiring into the distal true lumen, especially when the distal cap is located in the mid-RCA, the distal RCA, or the mid and distal LAD, because these points are easy to see fluoroscopically. But the mid-RCA, distal RCA, mid and distal LAD accounts for the majority of CTO distal caps. But despite this, 3D wiring is not being used. 3D fluoroscopic wiring in the current status around the world has almost zero use outside Japan. It was first described by Okumura in 2016, and in 2019, Okumura further described 137 cases in a case series, demonstrating higher success rate, 98 versus 90%, shorter procedure time, 29 versus 42 minutes, and a trend towards less perforation when 3D wiring was used. Yet despite this, 3D wiring is not adapted around the world. To quote Okumura in his own abstract, he says, however, the construction of a mental 3D image is difficult, and this remains a big barrier towards using 3D wiring, the difficulty in creating a mental 3D image. Also, the comprehension of Okumura's opposite behind same in front principle is very limited. And also the forosscopic angles that are required are unknown to most CTO operators. And therefore, 3D fluoroscopic wiring has almost zero pickup. In the APCTO Club, we took on the challenge to make 3D fluoroscopic wiring reproducible and comprehensible. And therefore, together, we developed adapt wiring, angiographic three-dimensional antegrade puncture technique. Adapt wiring does not require the operator to make a mental 3D image of the 3D structure of the wire and the target. It also has very precise rotational angles to maximize success. And so here in this talk, I want to present the algorithm for adapt wiring. Now, you can see the algorithm is in 12 steps. The first 4 steps are really the setup for wiring. Now, this setup is for any kind of 3D wiring. For all 3D wiring, you're going to need this setup. Steps 5 to step 10 is then the core to adapt wiring. Step 11, 12 are steps that are really taken when adapt wiring seems to have failed, the sort of troubleshooting. So step 1 is that we should stop wiring when the wire reaches 10 millimeters from the distal cap. Wires are forward-moving penetrative devices, and so they need longitudinal distance to cross the distance horizontally. The battleground for the distal true lumen wiring is 10 millimeters proximal to the distal cap target. And at 10 meters, we need to start directing and manipulating the wire with the three-dimensional fluoroscopic method towards the target. Number 2, we should drill the microcatheter towards the wire tip and step up the penetration force of the wire. Wire control is very dependent on backup force and penetration power. And therefore, it's recommended to drill the microcatheter to the tip of the wire 10 millimeters from the distal cap and switch out for a high penetration force wire such as a Gaia-Nex 3 or Gaia-Nex 4 or Conquest 12. Now, using a high penetration force wire in this instance is safe because we are only 10 millimeters from the distal cap. So there's no ambiguity. The distance we're traveling is very short, and therefore using a high penetration force wire is not dangerous. If we see features of a tough distal cap, we should step up to Conquest 12. The tough features of a tough distal cap are described in the heart-lung circulation paper of the APCTO Club, and these are the Washington Monument, the taper cap, the blunt rounded cap, the calcium in the cap, and the cap with a large side branch. Here's a figure to illustrate this. You see in A, a very big rounded stump. This kind of stump are usually very tough to puncture. In B, there is a big side branch to a rounded stump, very difficult. C, you can have visible calcium. And D is this kind of very taper-shaped Washington Monument kind of cap. The wire will slip off it. Number 3, we should put a torquer on the wire. Now, I know many operators around the world, and perhaps many of my audience, never used a torquer in their entire life, and this is okay. But remember, the torquer is not a religiously cursed object. There hasn't been a witch that's cursed it, so if you pick it up, your hand is not going to go into gangrenous and fall off, and you're not going to die, okay? It's safe to pick up a torquer. In this adapt wiring method, we need to rotate the wire by 11 degrees or 22 degrees. On a clock face, 11 degrees is 2 minutes. You go from 0 to 2 minutes, that's 11 degrees. You go from 0 to 4 minutes, that's 22 degrees. These are very small rotations, and you need a torquer to be able to rotate such small rotations. Now, we've developed what I call a sake cup torque augmentation device. It looks like a sake cup, and in fact, the inspiration came when I was drinking a cup of sake in Japan. And it's a cup-like device that you can put on top of torquer. Here you see in the diagram in the middle a normal torque device on a wire. And you can see on the right-hand side, you can put this cup onto the torquer, and this cup has graded markings of 12, 24, 48 degrees. So you can rotate precise angles with clear control of the wire. Number 4, the fourth setup, is to go to 90 degrees apart specific views for that particular coronary segment and do a biplane cine with retrograde injection. We need at least 90 degrees between the two X-ray tubes to maximize the 3D wiring potential. And we need to know the fluoroscopic angles to use. Now, the 3D fluoroscopic angles are as follows. For mid-RCA, it's LAO 45 and RAO 45. For mid to distal LAD, is also LAO 45, RAO 45, but both views are in cranial 30. Okay? For distal RCA, is LAO cranial 30, cranial 45, and LAO 30, caudal 45. The rest of the segments of any part of the coronary anatomy has been worked out by Okumura and is published in his chapter in the book Chronic Total Occlusion, A Guide to Recanalization by Ron Weisman and Shigeru Saito. Now, these 4 steps are essential setup sets for any type of 3D wiring. Whether you're doing Okumura-style 3D wiring, or you're doing adapt wiring, or you have another method of 3D wiring, you all need this common 4 steps. Number 5, now this is the first step of adapt wiring. You need to identify the view where the wire is further from the target. The wire looks worse, if you would, the far view. And in this view, you turn the wire tip towards the target. Now this step is very easy because all of you do this all the time. When we do CTO, we go to the view that looks worse and we turn the tip towards the target. That's what we do, so it's very natural. One little small tip you can choose to use if you have the ability to do this is to mag up and cone in so that you can see precisely the wire turn to make sure that you turn it most towards the target. But you don't have to do that. Now here is a figure 3, that demonstrates the far view and the near view. On the left-hand side, you see here, the wire before the tip, the shaft before the tip, is further from the target. The way we measure this is we draw an imaginary line from the midpoint of the target up the midpoint of the vessel. And we measure from this line to the pre-tip wire shaft distance. And the further distance view is the far view, and on the right-hand side, the nearer distance view is the near view. After we turn the wire tip towards the target in the far view, we go to the near view. and we turn very small turns, 2 to 3 degrees, to try to straighten the wire tip. Now, again, this is what we usually do. We usually turn the wire tip towards the target, and we go to the other view, and we turn the wire tip towards the target. That's what we do all the time. But here, we only turn very little to straighten the wire tip. And the straightening of the wire tip serves two purposes. First, by small rotations of straightening the wire tip, we figure out which direction we turn, the wire tip is going to move towards the target, and which direction is moving the wire tip away from the target. By doing this, we remove the need of forming a mental 3D map, because now, just by chance, we know which direction is towards the target and which direction is away. And because we turn very little, we're not going to mess up the wire direction. The second advantage of doing this wire tip straightening is it straightens the wire so that it's pointing directly at the tube, which means the next rotation, the angle can be very precisely rotated to point exactly at the target. Step 7. This is the only calculation we need in adapt wiring, and that's to calculate the ratio of the distance between the wire shaft and the midpoint of the target plotted up the vessel in the near view divided by the distance in the far view. The ratio of the distance from wire shaft to the midpoint of the target in the near view divided by the distance from the wire shaft to the midpoint of the target in the far view. So, how do we do this? Let's look at figure 3 again. So on the left side, you see that the shaft of the wire just before the tip is on the far right-hand side. And if we plotted a line up the middle of the target, okay, we find that it's quite a far distance from the pre-tip shaft. Usually what I do is that I take the vessel size as 8, and we divide it. If we divide half the vessel size, that's 4 units. If I divide that half by a further half, that's 2 units. And we divide that half by another half is one unit. So since in the left side of this diagram, the wire is almost as far as possible from the target, near the edge of the vessel, I will call this a distance of 4. So here we call it FD, F for far field, D for distance, is equal to 4. On the near view, the 90 degrees corresponding view, we find the pre-tip wire shaft is quite near the line that we draw up from the midpoint of the distal target up the middle of the vessel. And here is only about a quarter of distance between the midpoint of the vessel and the edge of the vessel. So the near view distance, N for near, D for distance, is equal to 1. The ratio of near view over far view, that's ND over FD, is 1/4 therefore. 1/4 we should rotate 11 degrees. So we can look back, we can look at this. 11 degrees on a clock face is 2 minutes. Now everybody knows from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock is 90 degrees. So from 12 o'clock to 7.5 minutes, okay, that's 1:30, is 45 degrees. Which means roughly every 2 minutes on the clock face is 11 degrees. 0 to 2 minutes, 11 degrees. 0 to 4 minutes, 22 degrees. 0 to 6 minutes, roughly 33 degrees. And 0 to 8 or 7.5 minutes is roughly 45 degrees. This is the rotation you need to make. How much do we rotate? This is point 8 on the adapt wiring. We rotate the wire in the near view according to the ratio. If the near view over far view distance, ND over FD, is 1/4, like in the case we demonstrated, we rotate 11 degrees. If it's 1/2, we rotate 22 degrees. If it's 3/4, 30 degrees. And if it's 4/4, which is the near view and far view wire pre-tip wire shaft distance is the same to the middle of the vessel, or the middle of the target, we rotate 44 degrees. Now this rotation is going to seem to you to be very little and not enough. But it is enough, and I'll explain why. I'm sure some of you have had the experience. You're doing a CTO, in one view you rotate the wire tip pointing towards the target. You go to the other view and you rotate the wire tip to point at the target also. You go back to the first view and you find the wire tip is pointing completely in the wrong direction. When this happens, most of the time it's because you over-rotated in the second view. And we rotate because of a visual error, which is known as the parallax error. Here is a diagram to demonstrate this. On the left-hand side, we have a far field wire, and we've rotated the tip of the wire to point towards the target. Okay? On the right-hand side, we have a near view. And now we rotate the wire tip towards the target side as well. But what you realize is that if you plot out a line from the wire shaft towards the center of the target, the line in the near view is actually very shallow. The reason is in the near view, you're foreshortening everything. It's not laid out. In the far view, the wire is like this. In the near view, it's foreshortened. It's either traveling towards you a lot or traveling away from you a lot. And so if you point the wire exactly towards it, it's going to shoot way over to the other side. It's going to overshoot because you've forgotten that it's foreshortened. This is parallax error, the visual error of foreshortening. That's why you need to turn a lot less in the near view. So now the next step, after you've turned your 11 or 22 or 33 degrees on the near view, you go back to the far view to wire distal cap. Now this is common sense. We always try to wire the CTO target in the view that it looks worse in, because the view that it looks good in is an overlap view. Okay, if on one view the wire is very far from the target, on the other view it looks like it's exactly right. The one that's exactly right is an overlap. It's not in the same plane. That's why there's a view is very far away. And we should always wire in the very wrong view because that's the view that we get most information from. So we should go back to the far view and push forward to puncture to the target. Now, if this is successful, then we've completed adapt wiring. But there are two things that can go wrong. One is the wire goes beyond the distal cap. This is called far side miss. The wire travels beyond the distal cap, cutting over it. Okay? And the solution for this is to pull back the wire to the tip of the distal cap and rotate it 180 degrees and puncture forward. Here's a demonstration. This is a model. We have a contrast stained CTO body that we've put under X-ray, and on the distal side we've put in a fine cross microcatheter and filled it with contrast to inject for the distal true lumen. We're wiring with a Garnex 4 wire, and you can see here as we wire, the wire misses on the far side. It overshoots the CTO. What we should do then is pull back a little bit and rotate 180 degrees. Now it will be pointing directly right, and then we can puncture into the distal true lumen, like so. What about the other problem? The other problem is instead of overshooting on the opposite side, the far side, it misses on the near side. The wire sticks onto the wire side instead of going further and comes too near. In this case, we should pull the wire back further to allow more longitudinal distance for the wire to cross horizontally towards the target. So the illustration I always give is you're trying to bomb a castle with a fighter jet. And when you drop a bomb, it should land straight on the castle. What if you drop a bomb and the bomb falls too quickly and lands before the castle? This is near side miss. Well, next time you come back, you fly higher, and so that there's more distance for the bomb to drop, and so they'll hit the target right on. Near side miss. So in figure 4, you can look at the near side miss. On the left hand side, you're beginning to wire 1. Note 2, the wire passes on the near side. What should we do? Note 3, we pull the back wire more than when we started off with in 1. And then that allows more distance for the wire to gradually creep across to hit the target right on in 4. What if we should pass? Well, if we should pass, what we should do is pull the wire back, and in the case if we are bombing a tower and if the bomb can be controlled, we rotate the bomb 180 degrees and it will hit right on target. And here on the right hand side of figure 4, you can see the far side miss. 1, we begin wiring. 2, the wire overshoots to the opposite side, the far side. What we should do is then pull the wire back in 3 so that it's right on top of the target. We rotate the wire 180 degrees, 4, and we can puncture into the target. So these two are methods to overcome the two possible errors with adapt wiring, or two possible miss with adapt wiring, the near side miss and the far side miss. Therefore, no matter where the target is in the vessel, and no matter where the X-ray tubes are relative to the target, as long as you have 90 degrees between the two views, we can use this algorithmic adapt wiring to do 3D fluoroscopic wiring. The adapt wiring does not require mental image and is intuitive to our normal CTO wiring practices. It is very precise rotational angles and therefore is very reproducible and robust. And I warmly recommend adapt wiring for you in your distal cap wiring cases, and I wish you success in your CTO PCI. Now finally, I'm going to play a little video of me modeling, doing adapt wiring on a CTO model, a live beating heart model.
Hi, CTO Demon channel friends. This is CTO Demon. I'm in my cath lab at the Prince of Wales Hospital working on a beating heart model. And here I'm going to demonstrate the new adapt wiring. That stands for Angiographic, 3-dimensional, Antegrade puncture technique. It's a technique specifically aimed at puncturing the distal cap into the distal true lumen. So here the model is an RCA segment 2 CTO. I have a Conquest 12-gram wire, Confianza Pro 12, with a 45-degree, 1mm distal tip bend. I set on a Corsair catheter, and I have an Ikari 6 French to the RCA and retrograde injection. So at the moment, I've wired down towards the CTO, and we have LAO and RAO view. The LAO is 56 degrees, the RAO is 35 degrees. This allows a 90-degree bend between the two. So first we're going to do a retrograde injection to see where our position is. Now you can see here in the LAO view, the wire is almost dead center. Now the way we measure distance in the adapt wiring method is we measure the pre-tip shaft, the shaft just before the tip, and we measure the horizontal distance to the center of the target. So we imagine there's a line that comes up from the center of the target, and we see how far we are from it. And you can see from the LAO view, this is slap bang on target. From the RAO view, it's near the back of the vessel, okay, and it's far away. Now, you can see on the RAO view, so the wire tip is pointing towards the target. So the first thing we want to do is we want to classify the views. The RAO view is now the far view, and the LAO view is the near view, because the shaft is nearer. And we also want to derive the ratio. The RAO is about the edge of the vessel, the LAO is slap bang in the middle. So the ratio is very small. It's 1/10 or 1/20. Okay? The near view distance over the far view distance is very small. So in the far view, we want to optimize the turn of the wire tip so that it's directly facing the target. Then on the near view, in the LAO view, we want to straighten the wire tip by very minuscule turns. Okay? And this serves two purposes. One is that by very minuscule turn, we know which direction we will turn the wire tip towards the target and which way away from the target. So we don't need a 3D mental map. Now after we turn, the second advantage of this minuscule turn is straighten the wire so that the next turn will be very precise. Now in this case, because we're slap bang in the middle, we don't want to turn the wire anymore. We just want a straight tip, like so. And we want to wire in the far view, because the most erroneous view is the best view for wiring. So we're going to go to the far view, and we're going to check the wire tip is still pointing towards it, and it is. And we're going to start wiring forward, like so. Now this wire has a lot of, now it's popped forward, okay? So now we need another retrograde injection. And you can see here now, both the far view and the near view, they are about the same distance. Both in the RAO and the LAO, the wire shaft is near the edge of the cap. So they are almost equal view, which means we can use either view to wire. So in the LAO view now, we're going to turn the wire tip so that it points directly at the target. and we're going to strengthen our backup a little bit more. And in the RAO view, we're going to straighten, we're going to turn 44 degrees after we straighten. So first we need to straighten the wire tip, like so. I'm going to use Cine because it's not very clear. This is straightened. And we now know counterclockwise is the direction to go for wiring. So we want 7.5 minutes on the clock because it's about the equidistance to turn. So we're going to turn 7.5 minutes and then we're going to push forward. It's very tough, okay? So one of the things that we need is backup force, because without backup force, it's going to be very difficult. So I'm going to try to rotate the microcatheter in to allow. So, okay, and now we can try to puncture since we've went in. Okay, so it looks like we've punctured, and we'll check whether it's in the true lumen with a contrast injection again. And you can see we've punctured in the true lumen, and we can freely wire then into the distal vessel. Oops, that's gone up to the top of the branch. So that's okay. And then we can turn the microcatheter across the lesion, like so, and switch out for a workhorse wire. So that's adapt wiring, and I hope you like the video and you can learn this adapt wiring, and it will improve your success rate in getting distal true lumen puncture. Good luck with your CTO wiring. Bye-bye.